The stars burned quietly above the capital of the Veari Empire, and the palace stood like a jewel of silver stone under the light of 3 moons. On this night many years ago, Queen Althera had walked the corridors with a newborn daughter in her arms. The child had been small and fragile, her skin pale like dawn, her eyes a rare violet color that the queen believed had been a blessing. The whole empire celebrated when the princess was born, for she was the first child of the queen, the hope of the throne, and a symbol of strength during uncertain times. But fate had not been kind. The border wars raged at that time, and enemies from the far reaches of the void had struck deep into Veari space. In the chaos during a surprise raid, the royal vessel that carried the child was attacked. It was said that raiders took everything of value, and when the ship was finally recovered, the child was gone. Some believed she had been killed. Others whispered she had been sold into slavery or taken far away, lost beyond the stars. No proof was ever found. The queen's heart broke that day, and though she never showed weakness to her people, those who served close to her knew she carried endless sorrow inside. Years passed, and the queen ruled with a stern hand. Her empire grew stronger, her enemies feared her, and her people praised her wisdom. But at night, when she stood on her balcony and gazed at the stars, she always wondered if somewhere her daughter still lived. It was a wound that never healed. Far away on a distant corner of explored space, humanity was beginning to rise among the stars. Their ships were smaller, their technology weaker compared to old empires like the Veari, but humans carried a restless spirit. They wandered into places others avoided. They took risks others found foolish, and sometimes they found wonders that should have been forgotten. Captain Daniel Hayes was such a wanderer. His ship, the Resolute Dawn, was not large, but it was reliable. Daniel was a man in his early 30s with a quiet strength about him. He was not the loudest in a crowd, nor the most decorated, but his crew trusted him because he never abandoned them and never lied. For Daniel, space was not only a job, it was a calling. He loved the endless dark, the chance to discover something no one else had seen. On one of his journeys, Daniel received a faint distress signal while charting an unmarked system. The signal was weak, old, and broken, but he chose to follow it. Many captains would have ignored it, thinking it a waste of fuel or a trap. Daniel was not like them. His heart always leaned toward those who might be in need. The Resolute Dawn descended into the shadow of a small moon, where an abandoned station floated silently. It was cracked, half-powered, and surrounded by debris. No ship had visited for years. Daniel and 2 crew members boarded the station, expecting to find nothing but silence. Inside, the corridors were dim and cold, the air stale. Old machinery hummed weakly, and walls bore the scars of time. They moved carefully, scanning for life signs. At first there was nothing. Then faintly a reading appeared. A single life form, deep inside. They pushed forward and found a small chamber that looked once like living quarters. Inside, sitting near a broken heater, was a girl. She was not human. Her features were delicate. Her skin carried a faint shimmer, and her violet eyes turned toward them with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She looked no older than 16 in human years, but there was something timeless about her. Her clothes were ragged, patched from scraps of fabric. She clutched a small locket in her hands, the metal worn, but still marked with an unfamiliar emblem. Daniel lowered his weapon first, his voice calm and gentle. "We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help." The girl did not speak at once. Her voice was rough, as if unused for a long time. "You are not like the ones who left me here." "Who left you?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. "They were not kind. They took many things, but they gave me food. Until they stopped coming back. I have been alone for, I do not know how long." Daniel's heart tightened. She had survived here alone, waiting for someone who never returned. He stepped closer slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "What is your name?" "Kalyra," she whispered, holding the locket tighter. Daniel knelt down so he was at her level. "I'm Daniel. My crew and I found your signal. We can take you somewhere safe." She studied him carefully, her eyes deep and searching. Then she extended the locket toward him. He looked at it and froze. The emblem engraved on the surface was intricate, shaped like a star wrapped in wings. He had seen it once before in an old archive about alien civilizations. It was the crest of the Veari royal house. Daniel realized at once what this meant. The girl was not just any survivor. She was someone who belonged to one of the most powerful thrones in the galaxy. He felt a rush of questions. How had she come here? Why had she been abandoned? Did the Veyari know she was alive? If she was truly who he thought, this was a discovery that could change everything. Where did you get this? He asked softly. It was with me always, she said. It is the only thing I have. Daniel exchanged a glance with his crew. They looked uncertain, even afraid. The Veyari were not known for kindness to humans. Bringing back one of their royals could bring reward, but it could also bring suspicion, danger, or even death. But when Daniel looked at Kaylira again, sitting alone in that broken chamber, he knew what he had to do. This was not about politics or wealth. This was about a girl who had been forgotten, who deserved to go home. He stood and extended his hand. Come with us. We'll take you away from this place. Kaylira hesitated, then slowly placed her hand in his. Her touch was light, almost trembling. Together, they walked back through the cold station, leaving behind years of loneliness. When she stepped onto the Resolute Dawn, she looked around with wide eyes, as if she had stepped into a new world. Daniel's crew gave her blankets, food, and warm water. She ate slowly, cautiously, unused to kindness. Later, when she slept, Daniel sat in his cabin and thought about what came next. To bring her home meant flying into the heart of the Veyari Empire, where humans were often looked down upon as reckless upstarts. But to leave her adrift was unthinkable. He could already imagine the pain of the queen, who might still be waiting for a daughter who never returned. He imagined the Empire's reaction when a human captain appeared at their gates with the princess in his care. There would be disbelief, anger, suspicion, but there might also be hope, Daniel decided then. He would not turn away. He would take Kaylira home no matter the risk. He felt a strange sense of purpose, as if fate itself had placed this responsibility in his hands. He looked out at the stars beyond the viewport and whispered to himself, one way or another, we're going to set this right. And so began a journey that would shake empires. A queen who had lost her daughter would soon see her again, and a human would be the one to bring her home. The Resolute Dawn drifted in the quiet of space, its engines burning low as it moved away from the dead station. Kaylira sat in the common room, wrapped in a blanket, watching the crew with cautious eyes. Every sound of the ship seemed strange to her. Every word spoken in the human tongue carried a rhythm she was still learning. She had lived too long in silence and shadows. Now there was warmth, light, and people who looked at her without cruelty. It felt like stepping into another life, and it frightened her as much as it comforted her. Daniel Hayes stood near the control panel, speaking softly with his first officer, Mara. Mara was sharp-eyed and careful, her hair tied back, her expression always serious. She had served with Daniel for years and trusted his judgment, but now her voice carried doubt. You know what this means, Mara said. If she is who you think she is, bringing her to the Veyari is going to cause trouble. They don't like humans in their space, Daniel. They'll think you're trying to trick them, or worse, that you kidnapped her. Daniel kept his eyes on Kaylira. She sat quietly, holding the locket close, her violet eyes fixed on the stars outside the viewport. I know what it means, he answered. But look at her. She's been alone for years. She has no family, no home. That locket isn't something a child makes up. She's theirs. She deserves to go back. Mara sighed, shaking her head. I'm not saying leave her, but you need to understand what you're walking into. The Veyari will not welcome you with open arms. Daniel gave her a small smile. They don't have to welcome me. They just need to see her. Later, when the crew settled into their routines, Daniel sat with Kaylira. She had barely touched the food, though she kept it near. He noticed the way her hands trembled whenever someone entered the room, the way her shoulders tensed as if expecting harm. He lowered his voice and spoke gently. You don't have to be afraid here. No one will hurt you on my ship. She looked at him uncertain. Humans, you're different from the others. Daniel nodded. Different, yes. We make mistakes, but I promise you we are not like those who left you behind. She tilted her head slightly. Why help me? You do not know me. Because you deserve help, he said simply. And because I think you have a family out there that still waits for you. Her hand went to the locket, fingers brushing the crest. My family. I cannot remember them. Only dreams. Voices sometimes. A woman's voice. Soft, kind. But then it fades. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. This girl who had been robbed of her life still carried the echo of a mother's love. He wondered what it would do to the queen. To see her daughter again after all these years. Would it heal her heart or would it open old wounds? He could not know, but he knew he had to try. Days passed as the resolute Dawn crossed into regions closer to Vayari space. The crew whispered among themselves. Some feared they were carrying danger aboard. Others, touched by Kalira's quiet presence, defended Daniel's choice. The girl rarely spoke, but when she did, her words were soft and thoughtful. She asked about the stars, about Earth, about what it meant to be human. She listened with wide eyes as the crew told her stories of oceans, forests, and skies filled with birds. She had never seen such things. Her world had been steel walls and silence. One night, when most of the crew slept, Daniel found Kalira awake by the viewport. She gazed at the galaxies, her hands folded in her lap. "Could you not sleep?" he asked, stepping closer. She shook her head. "The stars are too many. They make me feel small, like I could vanish and no one would notice." Daniel sat beside her. "I used to feel that way too. But then I learned something. Out here, even one person can make a difference. Sometimes, one person can change the fate of many. Small doesn't mean unimportant." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Do you believe I am important?" Daniel did not hesitate. "Yes, more than you know." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was the first time he had seen her smile, and it filled him with a strange warmth. But their journey was not without danger. As they neared Vayari space, a patrol ship intercepted them. The sleek silver vessel dwarfed the resolute Dawn, and its voice crackled over the comms with cold authority. "Unidentified human vessel. You are entering restricted space. State your purpose or prepare to be boarded." Mara glanced at Daniel nervously. "Here we go." Daniel pressed the comm button. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the human ship Resolute Dawn. We request safe passage to the capital. We bring someone of great importance to your people." There was a pause, then sharp laughter came through the speakers. "Importance? From humans? What trick is this?" Daniel stayed calm. "No trick. We carry Kalira, daughter of Queen Althira. Lost many years ago." The line went silent. The patrol ship adjusted its course and scanned them thoroughly. At last the voice returned, colder than before. "Remain where you are. You will be escorted." Daniel knew they had no choice. Two massive Vayari warships appeared, flanking the resolute Dawn. Their weapons glowed faintly, ready to fire if needed. The human crew shifted uneasily, but Daniel kept steady. Kalira stood behind him, clutching the locket tightly. "Do not be afraid," he whispered to her. "We're almost there." The escort lasted hours. Finally, the ships guided them into the orbit of the Vayari homeworld. Daniel had never seen such a sight. The planet shone like a pearl wrapped in glowing clouds, with sprawling cities that glittered even from space. Towering spires reached toward the sky, and fleets of silver ships moved with precise order. It was beauty mixed with power, a reminder that this empire was ancient and proud. The resolute Dawn was pulled into a docking bay where guards awaited. Vayari soldiers, tall and elegant, their armor gleaming, boarded the ship. Their eyes were sharp, their expressions filled with distrust. They ignored Daniel at first, their attention fixed on Kalira. She stepped forward nervously, holding the locket. One soldier gasped softly, recognizing the crest. "She bears the mark," he muttered. The commander, a stern woman with pale markings on her skin, spoke sharply. "You will be taken to the palace. The queen will decide the truth." The soldiers surrounded them, and Daniel felt the weight of their suspicion. He walked beside Kalira, shielding her slightly with his presence. The crew remained behind, though Mara caught his eye and gave him a silent nod of encouragement. The journey to the palace was swift. They were placed aboard a transport that glided over the capital city. From the windows, Daniel saw vast gardens, crystal rivers, and halls of silver stone. The palace itself stood at the heart of the city, vast and radiant, its towers gleaming under the light of the twin suns. It was a sight that humbled him, reminding him of how small humanity was compared to such ancient grandeur. Inside the palace, nobles and courtiers gathered, their clothes adorned with flowing fabrics and jewels that sparkled like starlight. Whispers filled the air as Kalira was led forward. Some eyes widened in recognition, others narrowed in suspicion. Daniel felt their gaze turn toward him as well, filled with disdain. To them, he was nothing more than a human intruder, daring to step into their sacred halls. The commander announced them loudly. "A human captain claims to have found the lost princess. He brings her before the throne." The great doors opened and Daniel saw Queen Althira for the first time. She sat upon a throne of silver and crystal, her figure tall and regal. Her hair flowed like dark silk and her eyes, sharp and commanding, studied everything with quiet power. Time had not softened her. She carried herself with strength, though Daniel sensed the sorrow hidden beneath. Kalira froze at the sight of her. The queen rose slowly, her breath catching. For the first time, Daniel saw the mask of strength slip. The queen's eyes widened and she took a trembling step forward. Her gaze locked on the locket, then on Kalira's face. The hall fell silent. "Child," the queen whispered, her voice breaking. Kalira held out the locket with both hands, her violet eyes shining with tears. I think I am yours." The queen's hands shook as she reached out and touched her daughter's face, as if afraid she would vanish. "Kalira!" The hall erupted in gasps. Some shouted in disbelief, others cried out in joy. Daniel stood quietly, his heart heavy with relief. Against all odds, he had brought her home. But he also knew this was only the beginning. The nobles' whispers grew louder, filled with doubt and suspicion. He could already see it in their eyes. They would not accept this easily. The hall of the Veyari palace had never been so still. Courtiers, nobles, and soldiers alike had gathered in the central chamber, their eyes fixed on the figure before them. Kalira, the girl who had lived in isolation far from this world, now stood trembling beside Daniel Hayes, the human who had returned her to her rightful place. Every detail of her being, the delicate tilt of her head, the violet glow in her eyes, and the small locket in her hands, seemed to make the room hold its breath. Queen Althira's gaze never wavered. Her hand rested lightly on her daughter's shoulder, though she feared to touch too firmly, afraid that Kalira might vanish as suddenly as she had appeared in this world. Her voice, when it came, was soft but carried the weight of authority. "You are Kalira," the queen said, her words trembling. "My daughter." Kalira swallowed, her lips quivering. I think so, mother. I do not remember much, but I remember love. And this," she lifted the locket, "this belonged to you." A murmur swept through the court. Some whispered in disbelief, some in awe. The elders of the Veyari Empire, those who had ruled beside the queen for decades, stared in shock. For years they had believed the princess was gone, lost to raiders in the farthest reaches of space. Now, decades later, a human claimed to have returned her. A tall noble with sharp eyes and a long cloak stepped forward. His voice was smooth but carried an edge. "Your Majesty, forgive my honesty, but how can we be certain this child is truly the princess? Humans are clever, but they are known for trickery. Could this be a ruse?" Daniel straightened, meeting the man's gaze evenly. "I understand your doubt. I would feel the same in your place. But I found her alone on a remote station. There was no one else. She has lived without anyone to guide her, and she carries the mark of the royal house, the locket. You can examine it if you wish." The noble's lips pressed into a thin line. "The locket could be replicated. Proof alone is not enough. We need more." Queen Althira's eyes narrowed. She did not speak immediately, letting her daughter's presence settle in the hall. Finally she said, "I recognize her. Not because of this locket alone, but because of the look in her eyes, the voice she carries. It is mine. I do not need more proof. She is my daughter." Another murmur rose, this one filled with outrage. A woman from the Council of Ministers stepped forward. Her robe shimmered, indicating her rank, and her face was sharp with suspicion. "Your Majesty, with respect, acknowledging her without full verification could destabilize the empire. We have not seen her in decades. How do we know she is not a spy or a tool of human influence?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance, but the audacity of these nobles still shocked him. "She is a child who has been alone for years. She has no allegiance to anyone except the truth of who she is. I did not bring her here for power or reward. I brought her home because she belongs with you." Kalira looked at Daniel, her eyes wide. She had never faced such hostility before. Humans had often been cruel. Smugglers had lied and raiders had chased her. But Daniel had been different. Calm, patient, unyielding. He was the first person in her life to act not for gain but for her. The queen stood taller, her voice ringing with authority. "Enough. You question the very essence of family? My daughter has been returned. I will not allow fear or suspicion to cloud this moment." Even as her words filled the hall, the court's tension was palpable. The elders whispered among themselves, some nodding cautiously, others frowning in skepticism. The weight of tradition pressed against the reality before them. A human had dared to cross their borders and present the lost princess. Some saw it as audacious, others as a miracle. A young soldier, barely out of training, stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Majesty, if she is truly the princess, then this human—" He paused, uncertain. "He deserves recognition. He brought her home safely." Daniel shook his head, refusing the praise. "I did not act for recognition. I acted because it was right. That is all I ask." The queen's gaze softened, and she reached for Kalera's hand again. "You are stronger than you realize, my child, and you have come home with someone who embodies a courage I respect. But the path ahead will not be easy. Many here will not accept you without challenge." Kalera swallowed, a mix of fear and resolve settling over her. She had survived storms, raiders, and the emptiness of space. She could survive this too. I will not run," she said quietly. "I will face them." Whispers erupted again. Some nobles expressed concern that the girl had lived in isolation for too long and would be unprepared for court life. Others argued that the queen's recognition was enough. Daniel watched silently, knowing that for Kalera this would be her first true test. Not of strength, but of patience and resilience. Over the following days, Kalera was given quarters in the palace. The room was unlike anything she had known. Walls of polished crystal, furniture shaped from materials she could not name, and windows that overlooked the city of the Veari. She wandered slowly, touching the surfaces, taking in the beauty and vastness of her new world. Daniel stayed nearby, though he was restricted from entering certain areas. His presence was both comforting and controversial. Some whispered that the human should be kept away, that his influence might be dangerous, but the queen refused to part them. She recognized what Daniel had done and valued his judgment. Kalera spent her days learning about her heritage. Teachers arrived to instruct her in language, history, and customs. She listened intently, absorbing details she had never imagined. She struggled with some lessons, her mind shaped by survival rather than study. But her determination impressed even the strictest instructors. One afternoon, Daniel was permitted to visit her. They sat together in a quiet garden within the palace walls. The air was warm, scented with flowers that seemed to glow under the soft light of the moons. "You're learning fast," Daniel said, watching Kalera carefully. "More than anyone could expect after all you've been through." She smiled faintly. "I must. If I am truly the princess, I cannot fail. But some people do not trust me. They think I am too weak, too human, too inexperienced." Daniel leaned closer. "Weakness is not measured by age or strength. It is measured by whether you give up. And you have not given up, have you?" Kalera shook her head. "No. I will prove I belong here." The next day, a council meeting was held in the queen's chambers. Daniel was asked to observe from a distance. Kalera entered the room with the queen at her side. Every eye turned to her, some filled with doubt, some with curiosity. The council members asked questions, some about her experiences, others about her knowledge of the empire. Kalera answered honestly, sometimes stumbling, sometimes showing insight that surprised even the elders. One noble, the same who had doubted her before, challenged her directly. "You have been away from the empire for years. How do we know you remember our laws? How do we know you understand what it means to be Veari?" Kalera met his gaze. "I have been away, yes, but I have never forgotten who I am. I may be human in some ways, but I carry Veari blood. I carry the mark of my family. I will learn what I must, but I will not allow doubt to define me." A hush fell over the room. Even the skeptical nobles had to acknowledge the strength in her words. The queen smiled faintly, pride shining in her eyes. Outside the chambers, Daniel waited. He felt a mix of relief and concern. The girl had handled herself better than he expected, but he knew court politics were far more dangerous than raiders or abandoned stations. The whispers of jealousy, fear, and suspicion would not disappear easily. Later that evening, Kalera and Daniel spoke again. "Do you think they will ever accept me?" she asked softly. Daniel considered her question carefully. "Some may take time, some may never accept you, but the ones who matter, the queen, those who see truth, they already do. And that is what counts," Kalera nodded. "I will not fail them. And I will not fail myself." Daniel smiled. "I know you won't. You've already survived more than most. The rest that we will face together." The days turned into weeks. Kalera grew stronger, her confidence blossoming. She walked through the halls of the palace with her head held high, learning the customs, speaking with advisors, and earning respect slowly but surely. Daniel remained a quiet presence, always nearby, reminding her that courage came in many forms, not just in battle, but in standing firm when others doubted you. Even as she adapted, Daniel could see the undercurrents of danger. Not everyone in the court welcomed her return. Some plotted quietly, their words sharp and their eyes colder than ice. He knew they would try to test her, to manipulate her, or even worse, to discredit her before the queen. And yet, he also knew something else. Kalira was not the same helpless child who had been taken from her home. She was stronger, sharper, and wiser than many gave her credit for. And Daniel understood, with a growing sense of awe, that humans, though small in the eyes of the Empire, had a power of their own. Courage, loyalty, and love, qualities that could not be measured by fleets, armies, or wealth. He had seen it in Kalira, and he had seen it in himself, in the decision to bring her home. The future of the Veeri Empire was uncertain. Politics would rage, whispers would spread, and challenges would arise. But one thing was clear: Kalira had returned, and with her, the strength of one human who dared to do what was right. The stage was set for the next trials, and for the first time in many years, the palace no longer felt safe. Whispers had turned into shadows, and shadows had turned into threats. Kalira could feel the change in the air. Every corridor seemed colder, every noble's glance sharper. She knew something was coming, though no one spoke openly of it. Daniel Hayes noticed it too. He had spent enough of his life navigating dangerous places to recognize when eyes were watching, when steps echoed a little too close behind, when silence carried more meaning than words. He stayed near Kalira whenever possible, determined not to let harm come to her. The queen, calm and composed as always, spoke little about the unrest, but she saw more than she revealed. She understood the court's games, and she also knew that Kalira's return had disrupted balances of power. Not everyone wanted the princess back in her rightful place. Some wanted her gone forever. One night, Kalira could not sleep. She wandered to the palace gardens, the same ones she had visited often to find peace. The stars shone above, reminding her of the lonely nights she had once endured on distant worlds. She was not alone now, yet the same feeling of danger pressed against her heart. Daniel appeared quietly behind her, as if he had been expecting her. "You should not be out here alone," he said softly. She turned, surprised, then gave a faint smile. "I thought I could find peace here, but even in these gardens I feel the weight of their eyes." Daniel's face hardened. "Because they are watching. Some of them would prefer you gone. I hear the whispers too." Kalira lowered her gaze. "They do not believe I belong here," Daniel shook his head. "That's not true. You belong more than any of them. What they fear is change. You are proof of survival, of resilience. You remind them that the world does not bend to their control. That frightens them." She looked at him with determination. "Then I must show them strength. Not just for myself, but for my mother, for the Empire." Before Daniel could reply, a shadow moved in the distance. Both of them froze. Figures emerged slowly from behind the tall hedges, their steps silent, their movements deliberate. There were 5 of them, cloaked in dark robes, each carrying slender blades that glinted under the starlight. Daniel stepped forward immediately, his hand reaching for the small sidearm he carried. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Kalira's heart pounded, but she obeyed. The assassins closed in, their voices low and menacing. "The human dies first," one of them hissed. "The girl will follow." Daniel raised his weapon, but he knew it would not be enough. 5 against 1 were odds too steep, especially in unfamiliar territory. Still, he stood his ground. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The first assassin lunged. Daniel fired, the sound echoing through the garden, striking the attacker down. The others rushed forward. Daniel fought with quick reflexes, blocking one blade, shoving another attacker aside. But there were too many. Kalira felt fear claw at her chest, but something inside her broke free. Not weakness, but courage. She grabbed a heavy branch from the ground and struck one assassin across the back, surprising him enough for Daniel to push forward. The fight was desperate. Daniel took a cut across his arm, but he ignored the pain, moving with relentless determination. Kalira swung again, striking another assassin's wrist and knocking the blade away. Suddenly, guards arrived, alerted by the noise. The assassins realized they were outnumbered and fled into the night, leaving 2 of their number behind. Breathing hard, Daniel lowered his weapon, his shirt stained with blood from the wound. Kalira rushed to him. "You are hurt." He shook his head, though his face was pale. "I'll live. More important, you're safe." The queen arrived moments later, her guards surrounding her. She looked at the fallen attackers, then at her daughter and the human who stood beside her. For the first time, true anger flashed in her eyes. "They dared to strike within my palace," she said coldly. "They dared to threaten my child." Kalira stepped forward. "Mother, Daniel saved me. Without him, I might not be standing here." The queen's gaze softened as she looked at him. "So I see." The next day, the great hall was filled once more. This time, the queen had called for every noble, every advisor, every council member. The tension was palpable. Daniel stood at Kalira's side despite his injury, refusing to be kept away. The queen's voice carried through the hall, sharp and unyielding. "Last night, assassins entered these walls. They sought to end the life of my daughter. They sought to silence her return and to strike at the crown itself. They failed." Whispers swept through the hall, nobles exchanging uneasy glances. It was Daniel Hayes, a human, who stood between Kalira and death. The queen continued. "It was he who defended her when others plotted against her. Some among you question why I trust him. Some among you despise that a human walks our halls. But last night, while nobles whispered and schemed, a human acted with courage." She turned, looking directly at Daniel. "You returned my daughter to me. You stood by her when danger struck. For that you have my eternal gratitude." Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "I only did what was right, Your Majesty." The queen looked at Kalira, her expression softening. "And you, my daughter, have shown courage as well. You did not cower. You did not falter. You fought for yourself and you fought for your future. That is the spirit of a true heir." Kalira's chest swelled with pride, though she remained humble. "I only wished to live to protect what I had found again. My home, my family." The queen raised her voice once more. "Let it be known throughout the empire. Kalira is my daughter, my blood, and my heir. She is the future of this throne. Any who deny her deny me." The hall fell silent. No one dared speak against her. Then the queen added, her tone firm and deliberate, "And let it be remembered that humanity, though small in number and far from our stars, has shown strength we cannot ignore. In Daniel Hayes I have seen loyalty, courage, and honor. From this day forward, he is not merely a visitor in our empire. He is a friend of the crown." Gasps echoed through the room. Some nobles looked shocked, others furious, but none could challenge the queen's decree. Daniel stood stunned, but he recovered quickly, bowing once again. "You honor me greatly, Your Majesty." The queen nodded. "It is honor well earned." Kalira's heart lifted. She felt acceptance not just from her mother, but from the empire itself. She knew the road ahead would not be without challenges, but she also knew she was no longer alone. After the ceremony, she and Daniel walked through the palace gardens once more. The air was calmer, the shadows less threatening. "You risked your life for me," Kalira said softly. "Why?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because you deserve to live. Because you deserve a future. And because, somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as just someone I was helping. You became family." Her eyes shone with emotion. "Then I am lucky to have found you." He looked up at the stars. "Maybe we both are." That night, Kalira stood beside her mother on the palace balcony, looking out over the city lights of the empire's capital. The people below sang and celebrated, the news of her recognition spreading fast. The queen placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I thought I had lost you forever, yet here you are, stronger than I could have imagined. And you returned not only yourself, but brought with you a reminder that even the smallest voice, even the most unexpected ally can change everything." Kalira leaned against her mother, feeling warmth and belonging. She looked out at the stars. The same stars that had once seemed so distant and lonely. Now they felt alive, full of promise. Daniel stood quietly behind them, watching the two figures against the starlight. He had come from a small world far away, with no power or influence, yet he had given an empire back its heir. Humanity might be small in the eyes of the galaxy, but in that moment, Daniel Hayes proved that sometimes the smallest spark could light the largest flame. And so the story of the lost princess did not end with sorrow, but with return, courage, and hope. The queen had her daughter once more. The empire had its future, and humanity had its place, not through fleets or weapons, but through the courage of one human who refused to turn away. The dust storm swept across the jagged plains of Aranthia, turning the red rocks into shifting shadows under the dim twin suns. Corporal Marcus Hale gritted his teeth as he trudged forward, his boots sinking into the loose ash-like soil. The mission had gone wrong from the start. His transport ship had been hit by enemy fire, leaving him stranded on this hostile alien world. Alone, exhausted, and armed with little more than his sidearm and his instincts, Marcus wondered if he would ever leave this place alive. Through the haze of the storm, a faint sound reached him, a high-pitched cry, weak but persistent. He froze. The terrain around him was littered with debris from what appeared to be a recent battle, shattered vehicles, scorched craters, and twisted remains of alien technology. He adjusted his visor and scanned the horizon. The sound came again, this time clearer, a terrified voice crying out for help. Marcus's heart quickened. He was a soldier trained for combat, for strategy and survival, but he had never been trained to ignore a child in danger. The voice came from a collapsed structure ahead, a building that had been reduced to rubble in some unseen explosion. He moved cautiously, keeping low, hand on his blaster, every sense alert. The debris shifted under his feet as he approached the ruins, and then he saw her, a small figure trapped under a fallen beam, eyes wide with fear and tears streaking her alien features. She was tiny, no older than 8 or 9, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly under the dim light. Her elongated limbs were twisted awkwardly beneath the rubble. "Hey, I've got you," Marcus shouted, though he knew the language might not matter. The child looked up, her eyes locking onto his, and something unspoken passed between them. Desperation, hope, trust. He dropped his pack and rushed forward, prying the heavy beam with all his strength. Sweat stung his eyes as he strained, muscles burning. The child whimpered and he whispered, "Almost there. Stay still. I've got you." Another rock shifted, threatening to trap her further. But Marcus pushed on, gritting his teeth. Finally, with a final heave, the beam lifted just enough for him to reach under and pull the child free. She gasped, clutching him tightly, small hands pressing against his armor. Her grip was surprisingly strong, as if she knew that letting go could mean her end. "You're safe now," Marcus said, panting, though he knew safe was relative on a planet like this. The storm had grown stronger, and distant howls, maybe creatures, maybe hostile forces, echoed across the plains. He helped her stand, supporting her small body as they moved away from the ruins. The child's eyes darted nervously around, and she pointed at the horizon, chattering in a language Marcus did not understand. He shook his head, trying to reassure her. Gesturing, he pointed back toward him, then toward a cluster of rocks offering some shelter. Slowly, cautiously, she followed. As they moved, Marcus observed her more closely. Her skin had a faint glow, and her hair, if it could be called that, was almost liquid in appearance, flowing and shifting like a living ribbon. Her eyes were large, dark, and intelligent, scanning everything with a curiosity that mirrored his own. Despite her small size and apparent vulnerability, she carried herself with a quiet dignity, a confidence in her presence that seemed beyond her years. They reached a shallow cave just as the storm intensified. Inside, they huddled against the wall. Marcus set his pack down and rummaged through it, finding a small ration of water and food. He offered it to her. She hesitated, then took it with careful fingers, mimicking his movements. He smiled faintly despite the tension. "I'm Marcus," he said. "What's your name?" She tilted her head, confused, then spoke softly. "Lyra." Her voice was musical, delicate, yet carried a tone of authority. Marcus nodded. Lyra, the princess of some alien kingdom, he guessed, though he didn't yet know it. The storm raged on outside, and Marcus kept watch. He knew this planet was alive with dangers, creatures, patrols, maybe worse. He also knew that hiding was only a temporary solution. Lyra needed protection, and he was it, whether he liked it or not. As the hours passed, he learned to read her gestures and expressions. She could point out dangers, warn of noises in the distance, and even indicate a path that might be safer. In turn, he showed her how to move quietly, how to stay low, how to watch the skies for predators. A bond formed between them, silent but undeniable, a connection forged in survival. By the time the storm finally began to wane, Marcus had made a decision. He could try to signal for extraction, but the child could not be left behind. Whoever she was important. He sensed it, the way she carried herself, The way other creatures seemed to avoid her presence, it was clear she was no ordinary child. With the storm dying down, he led her cautiously through the rocky terrain. They moved slowly, avoiding open areas, sticking to shadows. Lyra's small hands clung to his, and he felt an unfamiliar warmth, a sense of responsibility that went beyond duty. He was not just a soldier now. He was a protector. Night fell, and the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting pale light across the jagged landscape. Marcus found another shelter, a natural alcove in the rock face. He lit a small, controlled flame for warmth. Lyra watched the flickering light with fascination, her eyes reflecting the fire like tiny mirrors. "You're brave," she whispered, and though he didn't understand all the words, he felt the meaning. She trusted him, and that trust was heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. The hours stretched on. Marcus stayed awake while she slept, listening to the faint sounds of the planet, the rustle of unseen creatures, the whisper of wind through the rocks, the occasional distant roar that made him tense. But he did not falter. He had made a choice, and he would see it through. When dawn finally broke, painting the horizon in shades of orange and red, Marcus was already moving, guiding Lyra toward safer ground. He had no map, no allies, only instinct and determination. Every step was a gamble, but with her small hand in his, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than any fear. They reached the edge of a plateau overlooking a valley below. From this height, Marcus could see movement in the distance, figures patrolling, scanning the terrain. He signaled Lyra to stay low. She crouched beside him, eyes wide but calm, trusting him completely. Marcus took a deep breath. The next move would be dangerous. He would have to cross the open valley, evade detection, and find a route that would take them closer to safety. But he did not hesitate. With Lyra at his side, he felt a surge of resolve. He would protect this child, whatever it took. As they began their careful descent into the valley, Marcus realized something profound. He was not just a soldier stranded on a hostile planet. He was a human capable of compassion, courage, and sacrifice. And in that moment, he understood that this small alien girl had given him something far greater than survival. A reason to fight not just for himself, but for someone else. The wind carried the distant cries and the faint scent of alien flora, and Marcus knew the journey ahead would be perilous. Yet with Lyra at his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay before them. Somewhere in the distance, danger waited, but so did hope, and Marcus would ensure that hope did not die. Together they moved through the valley, shadows among shadows, forging a bond that would shape not only their destinies, but the fate of worlds.